Hello, welcome to lecture 11, Introduction to Phonetics. So, in phonetics we study about human sounds, but when we say human sounds you may think that we can actually articulate different types of sounds. Sounds which we articulate while coughing, while sneezing, but not about those sounds. We only study about sounds which are related to human language. So, the other noise we do not study, though those can be articulated through our mouth, but we do not study those. And our brain is smart enough, when we talk and in between we sneeze, we can easily understand that sneezing or coughing is not part of the language. And so, in phonetics we only study the sounds which are used to communicate through language. So, when we talk about phonetics, phonetics can be studied from three different perspectives. One is production, articulatory phonetics, second is transmission or acoustic phonetics, and third is perception or auditory phonetics. So, you can think when I am talking, there are sound waves being produced and the listener is listening to those sound waves are actually hitting the ear of the listener, and then those sounds are entering through his or her ear to his or her brain. So, there is three process involved. One is the production, where I produce the sounds. Third is the waves, those are created when I produce a sound. Second is that step, and third is when these sounds enter our ears, right. So, there are three stages, you can say. One is the articulation, when I am articulating a particular sound. Second is the sound waves being created because of my articulation, when I say something sound waves are being created, and that is called transmission. Through those sound waves the sound reaches your ear and then you perceive it, then you listen to that sound and you bring out meaning out of it. So, that is perception, that is auditory phonetics. You listen, the sound waves hit your ear and you derive meaning out of it. So, these are the three stages and these all three are actually studied in phonetics. So, I will talk about production at the end. I will begin with the acoustic phonetics, which is transmission. I will talk about the production later because I will elaborate on that. So, transmission is, as I mentioned, about the sound waves. So, in sound waves what do we study? We study the acoustic characteristics of the speech, the frequency, intensity and duration. So, all about the sound waves, how these sound waves are created, what are the frequencies of it, the intensity and duration. So, these can be measured. So, that is what is done in acoustic phonetics. These are composed of harmonics, frequencies and formants that show ear pressure pattern which is being done when something is being articulated. And you can see in this picture how different types of vowels are being articulated, and that shows how our mouth or our tongue positions become different when we produce different types of vowels. That shows that the quality of the sound waves depend on the source, the way we are articulating something, the way we are giving shape to our mouth. So, depending on that the sound waves change. So, that can also be called the larynx, from where the air is actually coming out, the filters that modify the source, that is the shape of the vocal tract, and the output, what is actually being articulated, what actually comes out of our mouth, because that is what actually creates the waves. And when we look at that in spectrograph, we can see the sound waves. When we record sounds and we look at it in spectrograph, we can look at the sound waves. And those sound waves are very helpful to study when we want to differentiate between different sounds. Sometimes only through our bare ear it is difficult for us to distinguish certain sounds, but when we look at the waves we can easily differentiate between that. So, here if you see in this picture, you can see that different vowels are used. So, only there is difference in the vowel, the consonant sound h and d are same, while first one is heed and the second one is hide, third one is head, fourth one is had. So, you can see that there are 4 different vowels, and for all these 4 different vowels the waves are different, it looks different. So, when we look at that, we can understand that all these sounds or the vowel quality is different because the waves created is different. So, when there is the difference in the sound wave, then different sounds are being created, and that is how we understand that they are different sound. That is how we can differentiate between, say, head or had. We know that head and had are 2 different words. Why? Because there are 2 different vowels. So, one of course is how I am pronouncing it, and secondly it is how the sound waves are being created when I am pronouncing it. So, in one you can clearly see that a different pattern is being created, but in the other again there is a difference in the sound wave pattern. So, different sound waves are being created and then you perceive it differently depending on that. So, depending on these 3 variations, we can see various types of sound waves being created which are used in language, which are part of our language. Then when we see these different sound waves, we perceive it differently. So, of course, we do not see the sound waves unless and until we are looking at the spectrograph, but when we listen to it, we know that there is a difference between head and had, head and had. So, they are different vowels because we perceive the difference. Our ear listens to the sound and it processes it and knows that in one there is a sound, in other there is a sound, and accordingly we derive meaning out of it. So, we know had and head are 2 different words in English and they have their own different meanings. So, listening to the word, deriving that they have different sounds, there are certain difference in the sounds, and then making the output that okay, that means they are 2 different words, that the one who is saying, the speaker, means head, does not means had. Okay. So, if we are listening to something, we can understand that. So, auditory phonetics is more related to the listener. So, how one is perceiving the sound, how one is listening to a sound, and how auditory apparatus actually help us to perceive the sound and change it into various neural signals, so that we can understand. And of course, then these neural signals are being processed by our brain and then we understand. In my last class, I already talked about Wernicke's area. So, these signals are then sent to Wernicke's area where again these sentences or words are being comprehended. So, but first in the initial stage the sound wave has to hit our ear and then it has to be processed through various neural signals. So, those all are studied under auditory phonetics. And now coming to production, which I will elaborate here. And so, what is production? As I mentioned, it is more about articulation. How do we produce a sound? How do we articulate it? It involves lots of process. It involves the process of the articulators. What are the articulators? I will talk about that. And there is also different process, because you know there are limited number of articulators. Articulators are like tongue, teeth, so the organs, speech organs. So, there are limited numbers of speech organs, but then we can produce different types of sounds with those. How we can do that? Because we adapt different process of articulation. So, all these comes under articulatory phonetics. So, in this image you can see different speech organs. So, when we are about to say something, our lungs is full of air and we release that air. So, through vocal folds the air comes out and then the velum actually blocks the nasal cavity. There are 2 cavities, nasal cavity and oral cavity. So, if we want to produce a non-nasal sound, the velum goes up and blocks our nasal cavity and then we produce oral sound, right. So, you can actually see that in this picture. So, you can see here that this goes up and the nasal cavity is being closed and you can utter oral sound. So, that is for the oral sounds, but when we have to produce nasal sounds like m, n, what do? We use both oral cavity and nasal cavity. Some of the air is passed through oral cavity and some through our nasal cavity. So, when our nose are blocked, it is very difficult for us to pronounce nasal sounds like m, n, it becomes very difficult for us to produce those. So, that is the basic process. The lungs, the air is filled in our lungs and then slowly it comes out either through nasal cavity or through oral cavity. And then there are lots of articulators in our oral cavity. There are articulators like lip, tongue, teeth, palate. All this actually helps us to create different types of sounds. So, how that is done, we will know about it. So, as I mentioned that there can be two types of, basically we can say there can be two types of sounds, oral and nasal. So, when the velum is actually not allowing air to be released from the nose, it is oral sound, any sound like p, b, t, g, p. But when some air is released through the nose, we have nasal sounds like m, n. It can also be vowels like e, a, all these can be nasal vowels. So, oral sounds are those produced with the velum, soft palate raised to prevent air from escaping out of the nose. So, all the air is taken out from the mouth, while nasal sounds are those which are produced by velum being lowered and some air is allowed to escape from nose as well, and then we have all these nasal sounds. So, both are of course used in the language. So, now if we want to divide sounds of human language into two basic broad categories, we will say one class is vowels and the other class is that of consonants. So, we can divide it between vowels and consonants. So, now I will like you all to forget about the vowels that you read maybe about English grammar. So, generally we study in schools that A, E, I, O, U are the vowels of English, but here we are not talking about that. Why? Because A, E, I, O, U, what you have learned in school about vowels is about writing system. Those are the vowels that we write in English. But as you know, here we are talking about sounds of a language. We are not talking about orthography. We are not talking about script or writing pattern. We are talking about what we listen, what we hear, and according to that we are actually dividing these two classes of sounds. So, how do we differentiate then between vowels and consonant? We differentiate it on the basis of production. How do we articulate? So, vowels and consonants are articulated in different way. There is difference in the way of articulation, and that is why these two major class of sounds have been are there. So, vowel sounds, when we produce it, we do not block the air anywhere in our oral cavity. The air from the lungs is directly taken out through our oral or nasal cavity without any blocking of the air. Air flow is direct. But in contrast to that, while we pronounce consonants, the air is blocked in our oral cavity. So, as now I mentioned, there are various articulators in our mouth like teeth, tongue, lip. All these help us to block the air and then we release it, and that is how we pronounce the consonants. So, when we pronounce vowels, at one go we can pronounce lots of vowels, we do not need to stop. So, you can try yourself, you can say A, E, O, E, U, A in one go, you can keep saying like that. So, lots and lots of vowels you can utter, but for consonants you need to stop because the air needs to be blocked. So, we can say P, T, K, Sh. I can't say it in one go, I have to stop because air flow needs to be blocked. before releasing it, and when we release it, a consonant is produced. So, one can't produce consonant without blocking the air. It is necessary that there has to be obstruction of the airflow in the vocal cavity to produce consonant, while for vowels we do not need that. And then there can be different types of vowels. We can change our shapes of mouth and produce different types of vowels. There are of course other criteria which I will talk about. So, let us first talk about consonants. So, consonant, I said that we block the air in our oral cavity and then we release it, and based on this parameter we can actually produce different types of consonants. So, there are basically 3 descriptive parameters for describing a consonant, or you can say for based on how we produce a consonant. So, 3 criteria actually defines the quality of a consonant. So, first is the place of articulation. Place of articulation means the place where we are blocking the airflow, where the obstruction for the airflow is being created. The place in the oral cavity where the airflow is blocked, or the speech organs involved in the blocking of the air. So, of course, the teeth will not move backwards, the teeth will remain in its place, and from that place only the air will be blocked. That is why that place is called place of articulation, the place where the air is being obstructed or blocked. So, like when I say p, I am blocking the air with 2 of my lips. You can try articulating that. So, when you say p, b, what do? You block the air in your oral cavity with the help of 2 lips, and then you release it, and then the sounds like p, b are created. You can also say sounds like f, where you are using the lower lip and the teeth to block the air, and then you release sounds like f. So, or you can use the tip of your tongue and the upper part of your mouth, and then you can produce sounds like t, d. There also you are blocking the air with the tip of your tongue and the upper part of your mouth, and then you are releasing it, and then sounds like t, d are being produced. So, place of articulation where this sound where the air is actually blocked before uttering the sound, that is called place of articulation. So, depending on the place of articulation, the quality of the consonant will change. Manner of articulation, how you are actually releasing the air. You have blocked it, all right, but then you release it. So, there are also different patterns through which we actually release the air, which again becomes very clear when we look at the spectrograph. When we look at it, we can easily see that the waves are different when we release the air differently. So, if I say p, b, there is a plosion type of thing, air is being released with a plosion, that is why these are also called plosive sounds. So, and in certain cases you will see that before actually releasing the air, some part of the air comes out, and we have sounds like sh, sh. So, there is of course, there is blockage of air, but then again some air is coming out before you are actually releasing the air. So, we have sounds like z, sh. So, depending on how you are actually releasing the air after blocking it, the quality of the consonant changes. And then the third is voicing. Voicing is about vibration of the vocal cords. We have vocal cords over here. So, you can see in this picture, these are the pictures of vocal cords. When these vocal cords vibrate a lot, we have voiced consonants. When the vibration is less, we have voiceless consonants. So, when we speak, our vocal cords allow the air to come out from our lungs, and when they are vibrating a lot, we are getting those voice sounds like b. But when the vibration is less, or sometimes people also say that there is no vibration, but of course, there are little bit of vibration. So, these are called voiceless sounds like p. So, you know You can also touch here and then you can have your feel it. So, when you are actually saying b, you might see there is little, you can actually feel the vibration, but while you are saying p, you might not feel it, it looks lighter. So, while b looks heavier. So, because there is more vibration. So, these when the vocal cords vibrate, here you can see it is open, directly the air is coming out in the word Paul. The air is directly coming out from your windpipe, trachea. Okay. So, from the lungs through windpipe, the air is coming out through the vocal cords, and when vocal cord is allowing it to come out easily, then we have those sounds like p, which is lighter, or you can say voiceless. But when we speak, our vocal cords close, so that the air from the lungs presses between them, causing vibration, which in turn produce sounds which are called voiced. So, here you can see that the vocal cords have come closure, they are closing, they are trying to actually block the air maybe, but of course, the air is not blocked, air comes out, and but in the process what happens, the vocal cords vibrates, because there is air and these vocal cords, they starts vibrating, and then there is difference between these two sounds p and b, and we know that they are different sounds. So, one is when there is more vibration, we call it voiced, while with less vibration we call it voiceless. So, these are the three parameters. Voice sounds like b, d, g, j, all these are voice sounds, while voiceless are p, t, k, s, where there is less vibration or no vibration. But what we also see is that in certain cases some sounds are taken as by default as voiced, like the vowel sounds or the nasal sounds. So, it has been taken as if that all the vowels or all the nasal sounds by default are voiced, because whenever we utter them, whenever we produce those sounds, there are vibrations in our vocal cord. But then in certain cases what happens, these sounds which are by default voiced becomes devoiced, they lose their voicing, and that is when they are called devoiced or devoicing. So, devoicing is the process where voiced sound becomes voiceless. So, m, nasal sound m, which is voiced, becomes voiceless, there is no vibration while uttering m. So, in some languages we do see that voiced sound becomes voiceless, and this we show with a dot under the sign, under the letter which we use to represent the sound, we write a dot under it to show devoicing. So, we will talk more about these symbols when we talk about IPA. So, in English also we do see changing of voice in certain words. So, here you can look at these examples. When consonants are put in groups, they can change the vocal quality of the consonant. So, when these words, depending on the environment, that means depending on the preceding or the following sound, the quality of a sound can change. So, if the ed, the past tense ed is preceded by a voiceless consonant such as k, it should be pronounced as a voiceless t, right. So, ed past tense, parked, it is not parked, it is not rather it is t, parked, marked. Similarly, if the ed is preceded by a voiced consonant sound such as b or bh, it should be pronounced as a voiced consonant d. So, it is robbed, rob, I will not say robbed t, with t I can't say it, I will have to say d, the last sound I am talking about, robbed. In contrast to parked, it is t, marked, it is not marked, it is marked. So, there is a difference depending on the environment, depending on the preceding sound. So, if the preceding sound is voiced, the following sound is also becoming voiced, while if the preceding sound is voiceless, again the past tense marker d sound is becoming voiceless t sound. Here you can also see if the ed is preceded by a vowel sound, it should be pronounced as a voiced d sound. So, I think you can guess why so, why when preceded by a vowel the sound again is pronounced as a voiced d, not a voiceless d, because as I mentioned vowels are voiced. So, the same rule actually. So, it is preceded by a voiced sound, that is why the ed d sound is remaining voiced, it is not voiceless. So, we say lied or fried. But of course, there are certain exceptions, like if the ed is preceded by t, it should be pronounced as voiced id sound. In this case, e is pronounced. So, it is dotted, rotted, plotted, vowel sound e is being pronounced, while in others we see that like lied, it is d sound is being pronounced. So, but in plotted it is id sound is being pronounced. So, depending on the environment also, like you saw in these examples, the voiceless certain sound which is voiceless can be replaced by a voice sound, or a voice sound can be replaced with a voiceless sound. So, I will sum up by saying that how actually we produce speech sounds. So, there can be actually two processes, one is outgoing of the air, another is ingoing of the air, aggressive or ingressive. Mostly in most of the languages the process is outgoing, air comes out of our mouth, it is not ingressive, it is outgoing, it is aggressive. Then it depends on the articulation, how we are actually articulating the sounds, the movement of our articulators, the shape of our articulators, how we are taking out the air after blocking it, all these actually affect the articulation. The shape of our mouth, the shape of our lips also contribute to that. And the phonation, phonation means vibration of the vocal cords. So, if we have voiced sound, the vibration is more and we have nasals or vowels. If there is no vibration, then those are called nil phonation, those are voiceless sounds. And also we know that by default sometimes voice sounds can become voiceless. So, this was about phonation and basics of how we produce speech sounds. In the next class we will go deeper into it. I hope you enjoyed the class. Thank you.